Hello and welcome back to Angie B Cards and Crafts. Thank you for joining us. What we're looking at today is more about the Dina Wakley Gloss Sprays, which are an acrylic gloss spray. I made a previous video about these, and one of the things which I did in that video was to do a reverse print having used the stencil. So the stencil that I used was this one. As you can see, I keep my stencils very clean. This one is from Clever Prints. It's designed by Emma Blake and it's called Circles Not Circles. I love it. I absolutely love it. So this one was used on one of the other pieces that I made in the last video, and then I did a print with it. So this is the print. So the blank spaces are the same as the holes that you see there. So if I do it the right way up, there you go. You'll see there all the blank spaces, roughly. Ta-da! So that's what I printed off. And the reason that I've come back to this is to then show you how you can add other colours in. So what happens with these sprays is if you spray them, they will resist each other. So what I've done is let this dry, so it's got a layer of gloss spray on it in the pattern, but I don't want the cream in the background. I want a different colour or a couple of different colours. So what I'm going to do is spray over the top of this with different colours, but then show you how you can bring this colour back and still show the pattern. So as always with the Dina Wakley sprays, they have a sediment at the bottom. I'm just shaking that one so you can't see very well, but you can see here there's a white sediment at the bottom. So you just want to give them a bit of a shake. Ideally you want to do it whilst you've taken the lid off and you're covering this, but I'm getting a little bit lazy these days and I'm just risking it. I'm being brave. Just takes a couple of seconds to shake and then spray over the top. Because it's plastic, try and get into the habit of cleaning the nozzle as soon as you finish with it. So I've sprayed one colour on. Oh, I've got that a bit soon. I'll spray another colour on. And then I'm just going to mop that off. So just a simple roll technique. So you can see there, I have taken off the colour that was covering what was already in place, but I have changed the colour of the background. But also because of the fact that I've used kitchen paper, there is actually a pattern that's now been imprinted as well. So if you want it to be smooth, don't use kitchen paper, or use a smooth kitchen paper. This one, I have no idea, I think it's probably a Plenty. I wouldn't swear to it, can't quite remember which one it was. But you can see that's a really good way of getting the colour to still come through. Now what I want to do now is just add some white over the top and just show you the effect of the white over it. So I'm going to do the same thing, put it on and then roll over it. Now the white is a slightly different consistency. It's a little bit thicker. There's not a lot in it, but you can notice a slight difference. So you can see now there's slightly more muted tones on the areas that have the white on them, and then the brighter turquoise is coming through on the bottom. So that's now a completely different tag from the one we started with, which was a bit boring. I still want a bit of colour in this because I don't actually like these cream tags. I came across them, was given them by someone, so I didn't buy them and I don't like the colour of them. I think we need a bit of lime green. So if we add in some lime green, and there, again wipe that nozzle and give it a roll. So each time you do it, just remembering to roll your kitchen towel over it, it just brings back that bottom layer, and that's what we're wanting. So you can see now you've got the greens, you've got the pink, let's think it was eggplant I used, wasn't it? Yeah, it was eggplant, lime, There's a bit of white which is muted down over here and up here and on here. Did we use a bit? Oh yes, we used a bit of olive as well. And then the original colour, I believe, was marine, but I wouldn't swear to that one because I've actually thought of something else since I sprayed it. So that's a really nice bright tag that you can now use on a card, on a journal page, or even just as a gift tag for someone's present. Really simple way of doing it. So one of the things that Dina Wakley says is don't force dry your gloss sprays. One of the things I say is I'm too impatient to wait, so I force dry them. And I don't find that there's a difference. I do leave some. If I'm making a few, I'll leave them over to one side, and my space shrinks as the day progresses if I'm making a few. But it doesn't take a lot, particularly if you've lifted off a lot of it with the paper towel. So there's a nice bright, slightly shiny tag. So because I'm me, I can't just leave it like that. I need to put something around the edges. And again, for quickness, I just use my Stays On ink pad. I love the size of this. It's not the full size one, it's the mini one. But I just really like the size of it. It just makes me happy for some reason. Don't know what it is about it. So this is just what I tend to do. I tend to do black marks on anything that I do because I just think it finishes it off. And then what you can do, you could even put a sentiment across there. In fact, ooh, let me root out one of my Seth Apter stamps. If I can find it. If you've not come across Seth Apter, I would highly recommend doing a search of his stuff. And this is one of his stamp sets. And I love this one. And I love it mainly for this one stamp. But I'm also going to use this stamp. So I've chosen to use this Words. It's, I don't know, I would think maybe Latin, possibly something like that. Very tiny script. And then it says, this one says Love Rust and has some little areas around it. And I really love the Love Rust bit. But I need a different colour for that. Can you tell I've not actually planned what I'm doing here? A little bit of yellow. Pink. Where's my pink? No. There it is. So I'm going to use the VersaFine Clair here. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is it is a long open time on it, so if you want to do other things with it you can. But one of the reasons, in fact I'm not going to use my stamp block. I'll use my stamp block for that one but not for this one. I'm going to use it for the background because I like the colours that I've got in it, and it's a permanent ink, but I've got some nice bright colours in it, and once it's dry it's there, it's staying put. It's not disappearing off anywhere, it's not going to react with water. So at the minute I've got gloss sprays which are acrylic, they don't react with water. I've got Stays On, which is solvent based, that doesn't react with water. I have VersaFine Clair, which is a pigment ink, doesn't react with water. So nothing that I'm putting on here reacts with water. So once it's in place and it's dry and it's set, it will stay as it is. And that is just what I want with this. Okay, so that pink is showing it up really nicely. And don't be afraid to go over the top of other pieces that you've already put on in a different colour. So I've double stamped on there. I think that looks kind of cool. It's down to individual people what they want the piece to look like, and don't be afraid to play and experiment. Right, so because that's on top of acrylic and it's VersaFine Clair, and because I'm going to be putting something else on top of it, I want to fix that in place. I don't want to smudge it. It does have a long open time, which means it stays wet for quite a long while, which is really good if you're going to do something like heat embossing. But if you're then going to put something else on top of it without heat embossing, you really want to get it dry. So to do that, good old heat tool. I don't know what I'd do without my heat tool. I use it constantly. It is such a good thing. I do have my pink heat tool, which is the embossing tool. I don't tend to use that very often. Even when I'm embossing, I use the one that I've just shown you. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to blot. So I've just got a piece of copy paper and I'm just blotting over the top. And the reason I'm doing that is just to pick up, you can see there's still some residue come off. So because the ink is sitting on top of acrylic, and acrylic is a plastic, it hasn't been absorbed. If we'd used StazOn in a different colour rather than the black that I've got, then that wouldn't have come off. It would have dried because it's solvent based. But because we're not using StazOn, we're using the VersaFine Clair, that doesn't dry as easily on top of the plastic. So that's just why I'm blotting it off, just to get rid of most of the wetness about it. Right, so to put the sentiment on, which is Love Rust, I'm going to do that in black just so that it stands out. Now I'm using the StazOn because I know that I'm not intending, note I say, to emboss it. So I haven't got any of my embossing stuff out ready. I am just putting ink onto the stamp and then I'm just going to stamp. Am I going to stamp that way? No, I'm going to stamp this way. I'm going to stamp into the middle. These stamps are just, they're phenomenal. I love, there's so many sets that I'd love to get that are Seth Apters. I think I've got 3 or maybe 4 sets at the minute and a couple of these smaller ones as well. I mean, that is just, oh, love it. So what I think it would be worth doing is having a look at getting something rusty coloured or something metallic onto this as well, just because we've used the word rust. So what we could do with that is, I have the perfect embossing powder, I think. So if anyone ever asks me where this one's from, I actually can't remember. It could well be Stampendous, possibly. I'm not sure. I've had it for years and years and years, and it lives in takeaway carton, and at one point it did have the name written on, but that was a long time ago. So this embossing powder has got mainly brown, but then you can see there is a hint of green there as well, and there's some golds in there as well. So it gives a really nice rusty, metally, verdigris kind of print. Excuse me. But what we need for that then is the correct ink. So we have a couple of options. We can use a coloured ink, such as the VersaFine Clair, or we can use something like Perfect Medium or any other embossing powder that you happen to have. It depends on how you're going to use it. What I'm thinking is, if we just put some around the edges, it's just going to make it all look a little bit more rusty related. So the thing with using stuff like Perfect Medium, I always find that I ruin my Perfect Medium pads. I'm not quite sure why I do it, but they always seem to fall apart on me and get this kind of weirdness. I've had little ones, I've had this size ones, they all do it. I think I just don't use them very well. But they do the job. So we're just going to pop this on. So Perfect Medium is effectively glue that will stay wet until you put something on top of it and melt it into it. Okay, and that's what we want. You'll also see, you can see it, hopefully you can just see it here, that there's some of the coloured background is also picking up the embossing powder, and the reason for that is it is the VersaFine Clair, and as we've said, the VersaFine Clair has a long open time and is really, really good for embossing. There we go. Right, that's a starting point. We may add some more momentarily, but let's just have a look and see what happens with this. So we then start to just heat it. Yeah, it's up to temperature because I'd already used it, and we're just looking, you can just see straight away it's starting to go. I think this is my favourite ever embossing powder. It is just, I love it. I love the colour of it. I'm not into gold and things like that. I do have gold embossing powder, but I rarely use it. But with this one, I love the effect of it. It's a little bit hot. So that magic of embossing powder. I don't think I'll ever get bored of watching that. It is just so cool. As you heat it up, contents of the powder just melt. I really want to get my hands on some, oops, that's what you don't do, is put your finger in it because it burns. Is get hold of some Wow embossing powders. I believe they are rather good, but I haven't got any yet. So now we have, oh, I put my thumb in there as well. See, that's what not to do. Don't put your thumb in and your finger in because you get burnt and you also get thumbprints. But I actually quite like the way that's looking, but I think it still now needs a return of some of that black. And again, that's down to personal preference. I just like anything that I do to be outlined nicely, but to also look a little bit distressed. And I think the fact that we've got distress around the sentiment on this as well, I think it really does need it all around. So there we have a super duper finished tag. And because I've just used StazOn, which as I said before is a solvent based, so it says here fast drying solvent ink, so that means it contains alcohol. The solvent in it is alcohol, and because of that, as soon as the alcohol evaporates, the ink is dry, which is why it's so fast drying. But it also means don't use this if you are going to be colouring with alcohol markers, because they will just reactivate it and it'll start smudging and the likes. So all in all, I'm quite pleased with that. I may consider adding some bits of cogs or something to it, I don't know, but I would want to rust them up a little bit. But I quite like the look of that, and hopefully you do too. I hope you found that interesting. I will take it off here and lay it onto the mat. Please feel free to subscribe and to click the little bell button so that you get notified when I put a video up on YouTube. Follow me on Facebook, Angie B Cards and Crafts, or on Instagram, Angie Mary B, and I shall see you again very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.